Welcome back to The Beat. It is the post-Christmas hangover edition of The Beat presented by the Waterworks. I am Austin Ward. That is Jeremy Birmingham. And these are very uncomfortable chairs.
But they're beautiful.
Okay.
They're beautiful. They're romantic. Made of pure helmet.
Pure helmet. They sit in the back here. And if I had got these as a Christmas present, I would return them. But you said, Jeremy Birmingham, I'm Austin Ward, that we should get into some of the presents that Ohio State got. Ones they should keep, ones they should send back, because we didn't really lean into a holiday theme for any version of The Beat.
No, and the reality is, on a day like today, the day after Christmas, everyone's waking up feeling hungover or just super happy and comfortable, as we are, 100%, on this episode of The Beat presented by the Waterworks. And we are, as you said, trying to dive into a year that I don't know that this year will ever get the full appreciation that it deserves from Ohio State fans because, A, the Buckeyes lost their last football game. B, they won a national championship a year ago, and so everything else feels like until you climb that mountain that maybe you're in flux or in a disappointing season because I go back to February of last year and the conversations we would have about what to expect for the 2025 Buckeyes football season. And all of the conversation really centered around this idea of get back to beating Michigan. Done.
They did that.
Anything else is gravy. That was kind of the vibe 8 months
How quickly
ago.
It can change.
And now it's national championship or bust once again without all of the discussion around that topic, because last year's team was clearly national championship or bust. And I think there was a lot of people, myself included, who thought that the 25 season would be the rebuild. Not necessarily that Ohio State ever rebuilds, but you could look at that schedule and think, well, you might lose a game or two. You got a first-time starting quarterback. You've got all these unknown parts on defense. You're replacing 8 starters. And then the defense was better. Julian Sain was a Heisman finalist. And Ohio State did it in a way that felt completely foreign offensively.
Yeah.
And yet here we are heading into the playoff as one of the top 4 seeds with a first-round bye, getting ready to rekindle a rivalry against Miami with a clear path to a national championship. And so for Ohio State fans, it's like, what can you be thankful for? I know that's normally a Thanksgiving theme.
Yeah.
But what do you look at this team and say, boy, if that didn't happen, this year would have gone different?
I think, we talked about it actually on the Wednesday Stock Watch a week and a half ago, with the biggest surprises. And some of these I think would fall into that category. But I think the one thing more than anything else was the package that Jim Knowles presented to Ryan Day after the national championship. And Ryan Day took his time in that process. He made a hire that, I can only speak for myself. I was skeptical of. I had bought into the narrative and the perception of Matt Patricia that he was going to be a prickly personality, that there was the Belichick ran strong in him, that the college game was not going to be an ideal fit for him. But I said, let's see how this plays out. Ryan Day has increasingly earned the benefit of the doubt in the hiring process that, he, as a first-time head coach, the first few years were definitely some big swings and also some big misses that came along with that. For every Jeff Hafley, you had a Kerry Combs. For, the length of time that you had Corey Dennis, then it turns out that Billy Fessler was I don't want to pick on people. That's not the point here. Jim Knowles also goes in that category of someone who was really good for Ohio State at that time and won a national championship. But his departure coinciding with Ohio State needing to replace the number of veteran starters, the entire defensive line, Ablocco and Cody Simon, starting corner and Denzel Burke, a pair of other key pieces at safety with Lathan Ransom and Jordan Hancock, the things that the people that are watching and have follow along with all the Ohio State content all year, all the things that you already know, that was even if you thought that the next wave of talent was going to be really, really good for Ohio State and for the Silver Bullets, finding the right guy to lead that, to work with the staff that was already in place, and then to maximize that talent that was on hand, I don't think that it should ever be taken for granted, and I don't think that it is, because what Matt Patricia has done is historically dominant. And there's 3 games to go potentially before we can actually say that he, met the same standard of his predecessor. But one of the things that we said burned throughout the entire offseason was, boy, Matt Patricia's doing this, and here's the hugs at the June camps, and he's being more involved as a recruiter, and gosh, there's a lot of excitement about what the scheme is going to look like. And I said then, there's still no guarantee. He's got to go out and play the games, and then pass the test immediately against Arch Manning in Texas and into that narrative nationally, and just game after game after game. And even the loss to Indiana, I don't have anything in me to fault the Silver Bullets for that, even for the couple passes that they gave up. So all of that is to say, I don't think you could find one single gift for Ohio State that was better than the one that Ryan Day got from Jim Knowles, with an opportunity to then reset for the future on defense.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways it's funny because I think that gift, again, certainly not what anybody wanted to happen last January.
You open it and you're like, what is this? This is a box of poop.
You're like, oh, but also then you realize you can turn that into fertilizer and grow a whole new yard, right?
Oh, very well done.
And so you've got this new yard, but I think the real gift there came for Ryan Day a year earlier when he completely shed his former philosophy on what it meant to hire coaches, and understanding that he didn't have to scramble. He didn't have to hurry just because Jim Knowles left. There was a lot of defensive coordinators around the country who would have crawled through broken glass to get to be the Ohio State defensive coordinator at $3 million a year. Like that, it would have been, the list would have been, longer than the naughty list up at Michigan. So like it's a situation where Ryan Day's patience and his development as a coach, I think, is so valuable for Ohio State, because there's no world where Matt Patricia would have been the hire for Ohio State 3 years ago or 2 years ago, until the offensive coordinator search and Bill O'Brien and Chip Kelly, and understanding that Ryan Day finally grasped, like, you're Ohio State. You can go get anyone you want, really. Like, you don't have to just pick the hottest college coordinator.
Anything you
want. And he did. And so then you see what Matt Patricia is. And again, Ross, if you're listening,
we know you are.
Let's get that contract extension on the table in front of Matt Patricia so that you don't have to worry about this a year from now.
It has been 4 whole days since you offered a reminder.
Right. So let's speed it up.
That'd be a pretty good gift for Matt Patricia.
That'd be a great gift. And it'd be a great gift for Buckeyes fans. And I want to pivot away on the coaching discussion, and maybe it'll be an unpopular opinion right now because of the way that maybe Brian Hartline is being perceived. But I think Ohio State fans, I hope Ohio State fans, allow themselves to be grateful for the 8 years that Brian Hartline gave to Ohio State, in a situation where he came in as a guy who was basically just killing some time in 2016, starting as a assistant, not a GA, but
showing up to practice,
right? Just
with
as
Bobby Carpenter,
just as an analyst, showing up to watch practice, and then
participating in practice,
turning it into what he turned it into, and then still, even despite what's gone on in the last few weeks, or the conversation about maybe him not being entirely focused on Ohio State leading into Indiana, he was still on the phone with Chris Henry Jr. saying, hey, Ohio State's where you should go. Brian Hartline, what he did to revolutionize and to start an evolution of the Ohio State brand as the place for wide receivers. And again, it's always been good. Okay, mm-hmm. Ohio State's always had great receivers. But what he did, I hope that there's a graciousness in people's heart to know that Brian Hartline completely changed the national perception of what Ohio State was as an offensive program. And it's like more so than Ryan Day. And obviously it's Ryan Day. He's the architect of it all. He's always been the guy whose offense it is. But without the effort of Brian Hartline in the last 6-7 years, this is not what Ohio State would be. And so thank you, Brian Hartline. Good luck in Texas.
I think that there's also a matter of, we've talked about the maturation process of Brian Hartline as a coach. I wouldn't pretend like that's done. Like, that's going to change. He's going to have a different seat at South Florida.
Has to change for him.
He's going to learn more things and do more things. But, he could have easily not accepted this, quote unquote. He's got a demotion at Ohio State while he's getting a promotion at South Florida. But if he wasn't comfortable with this, if he didn't want to, wait, you're just going to force me to coach wide receivers? Like, I don't need this.
We saw what Lane Kiffin did.
I mean, lots of coaches have done that. And at the first sign of that, I'm out of here. Brian Hartline still wants to be around his guys. And even though Ryan Day was taking back the play calling reins for the Cotton Bowl, he didn't say, well, Brian Hartline brings no value to this staff. Yeah. Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate don't want him around. We're just going to put Keenan Bailey in there. Like, none of that is happening. They wanted to find a solution. And the calendar in college football is broken. This is one of the, there's been a lot of times that's impacted Ohio State. It's the first time that's really damaged some of the planning for the coaching staff for the college football playoff specifically, at least in this era, not counting 2014 or 2016 with Tom Herman or Luke Fickell. But they wanted to find a solution, and Brian Hartline had to be open to that. If he could have demanded, I'm the offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
I'm going to call the plays. I was doing this all year, and give me that opportunity or else I'm out of here. That's not what happened. That's not the way these conversations work. They came together collaboratively, as they always do, and Brian Hartline loves Ohio State. He loves the wide receivers room. He wants to be part of this process as long as possible. And I guarantee you, and I remember, I alluded to it after the game at Lucas Oil Stadium, how emotional he was leaving the press box, how long it took him to leave. Ryan Day is always going to be eaten up by any loss, and he's not going to sleep. He's going to try and get it fixed. I guarantee you, Brian Hartline, going back to childhood, you're not going to find someone who cares. You might find someone who cares as much as Brian Hartline, but probably not more for the Scarlet and Gray. So, whatever it's going to take for him to contribute positively to a win in the Cotton Bowl and beyond, he's going to do that. He does deserve that appreciation. You're absolutely right.
100%. You know who else deserves appreciation?
It's the Waterworks and Hetter Energy Savings Plan. You can keep your home winter ready with the Waterworks and Hetter Energy Savings Plan. Get priority heating service, members-only savings, and continuous comfort all year long. Call today to schedule. It's the Waterworks and Hetter, 614-232-2222.
There's another coach, I think, that this year, I don't know. I mean, obviously the way that the conversation around Brian Hartline's tenure at Ohio State has gone will change. It's going to shift. I think that Larry Johnson this year and the work he did with this front four is one, and it's not just the front four, and it goes back to the original point you made about Matt Patricia. It's the synergy between those guys and what we've seen out of an evolving front four. And, there was a lot of, skepticism, I guess, when it came to whether or not Larry would be able to or be willing to collaborate, bless you, on the defensive front. Would that be something that Larry would be willing to amend? And there was all the conversation a year ago, and Ryan Day said it, and Larry said it, and Jim Knowles said it, and I don't think anyone really believed it, which was, but this group, the 24 group, this is what it's made for. So we could try and tinker, but it would be like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Mm-hmm. Next year, it'll be different. They said it all the time. And I don't think anyone believed it. And then it was. And so, kudos to Larry Johnson. And he deserves a ton of credit because I've said it multiple times over the season. I said it back in the spring. I thought this would have to be his best coaching year that he's ever had. I thought it would be the most challenging for him in a long time. And he absolutely aced it.
Yeah, he did. I've said it a couple times in the last couple weeks. I think this is the best coaching job of his career. That will sound like being a prisoner of the moment, recency bias. I stand by it. I mean, I've witnessed every single coaching job he's done at Ohio State. And a lot of those are easier to do when you have a veteran, easy being a relative term. Getting the most out of 4 seniors and having all of them come back is a tribute all on its own. Jack, JT, Tyleik, and Ty was awesome. That was years of development by Larry Johnson. It shouldn't be a knock on him when I say that it's easy. He kept them in the program. He developed them. He got them to the finish line. It is more straightforward when you still recruit Chase Young and Joey Bosa and Nick Bosa. You deserve credit for all that too. I know it's a matter of perspective. Larry Johnson shouldn't be discredited the same way that Ohio State coaches should not be ruled out from winning National Coach of the Year award because they recruit at the highest level and have a talented roster. But he had to almost microwave Larry Johnson, these results from the Rushmen. And I know that Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson have been in the program for a long time, but they've never been counted on as full-time guys. Caden McDonald didn't have to do that a year ago. More specifically, what Larry Johnson had to do when Edric Houston gets hurt on the first day of training camp and Tywone Malone had spent, several years really not finding that next gear that Larry Johnson had always believed was in him going back to the first recruitment coming out of high school. You had to replace all of that at once. And that had never been the situation that he faced before. And he did it marvelously. At, 10 years older than when he was coaching Abosa for the first time, and bringing along Taekwon Lewis or Sam Hubbard or any other point that you want to look at, the mile markers along the way. This was the most difficult job that Larry Johnson has had to do, and therefore it's the best.
Yeah, and I think he deserved it, because you can look at last year's group and assume that there was no need for Larry to keep developing that group, and that's just not true. But the real strength of this group, the Caden Curry, the Kenyatta Jackson, the Caden McDonald, even the Taiwan Malone, is that you had 4 guys that watched what happened a year ago, and instead of being pouty, instead of being cynical, instead of getting bitter that they didn't play as much as they wanted to a year ago, they all immediately, the leadership that Caden Curry, Caden McDonald, and Kenyatta Jackson have shown this year, after having no role as leaders a year ago, is sensational. And you know, obviously you look at this defense and there's Sonny Styles and Caleb Downs, and you know those guys are that guy, that leader. Yeah. Sonny got to work hand in hand with Cody Simon and pick up all of those great traits. That defensive line is different, and it starts with Caden Curry, in my opinion. He's the heartbeat of the entire defense. The brain of the defense is certainly Caleb Downs, but Caden Curry and the way that he's just been like pumping the blood of this defense through the defensive line, and then you see it go into Kenyatta Jackson and how he's been. Like, it's just a really remarkable job, but it all starts with Larry Johnson. And at times, I think people can look at the way his offense, his unit, the way that his defensive line, it's almost sectarian in a way. Like, well, Larry's guys are kept separate. And there are times when you're like, does that work? Is that necessary in today's sport? And you know, there's
been times where it didn't work.
There's been certainly times where it didn't work, and certainly times where you felt it might have been even counterproductive to the overall culture of the defense. But that's not the case this year. And I think that those guys specifically, but Larry in some deserves all of the credit for saying, our defense is changing. We aren't. And that's been a major, major plus for us. Because that was the question mark of the entire season.
Or Larry Johnson saying we can change.
Yeah.
Like, the overall approach may stay the same, but being open to tweaks. I think that had been some of the frustration from previous regimes. You know, we don't have to rehash all that. We don't need to. It doesn't matter to relitigate all of that stuff with the Rushmen from the past. But when we talk, going back to Matt Patricia and acclimating in with the rest of that staff, not just Larry Johnson, James Laurinaitis, Tim Walton, Matt Guerreri, everybody working cohesively together. Has Larry Johnson been like, you know what, if Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles don't get any reps with the Rushmen, they can't play on the line? No, that has not happened.
Yeah.
If it's odd fronts, if it's 5 guys on the defensive line, they've done a bunch of different things, more so than ever before. And Larry Johnson's as much a part of that as anybody. So that's...
And he looks at peace, and I'm telling you, if just from seeing it on the field after games, the relationship between him and Ryan Day looks like it's stronger than it's ever been. I mean, we saw them after the national championship game last year. They were very, they were embraced. They were very affectionate toward each other. But even like after the Michigan game this year, seeing that on the field, like that the chemistry and the alignment of this coaching staff right now is even at a higher level than it was a year ago. And that's with coaching changes happening, which is crazy.
I do have a gift that was given to Ohio State that I hope they kept the receipt for so that they can return it. Ohio, by the band Cam. Please, Ross, we know you're listening. America, you tell me if I'm wrong. I don't think it worked. I didn't like it. I thought it killed the energy, especially the first time I heard it, and nobody had any preparation really for it against Texas in a high-stakes game with all the passion just sucked right out of the horseshoe. It's not a good song. It doesn't fit the Buckeyes. They've made a really good effort for it, but some of the traditions that work at, I don't know, Oregon are not going to carry over to this place. And they wrote some lovely lyrics. Like, camp, good for you. Like, it's fine. The instrumentation is fine. Does it work for football in the horseshoe for the Ohio State Buckeyes? I would say unequivocally, I don't believe it does.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you. I just think it's a very natural swap. Ohio State has taken to playing Ohio by the Black Keys as the walking off the field song, the end of the game song. I think you just swap them, okay? Because if you want people to be able to wind down at the end of the game, fine, play Ohio by Camp then. But that song is written about like Athens in the University of Ohio or Ohio University, whatever.
Oh, is that not Columbus?
It's not Columbus. Columbus is not that. Columbus is not a podunk town in the mountains, okay? Like it is a city. There are other things that you can have in that spot. And I applaud the effort. And I think Ohio State fans should be grateful for what Ross Bjork and the athletic department have tried to do in the last year.
I do think the overall game day atmosphere was improved.
Infinitely better throughout this season. Infinitely better. And when you consider what the home slate was, it's almost a miracle that it ended up being better because the home slate this season was an absolute dud.
Yeah.
But minus the Texas game. So you have another offseason to tinker and grow. Kudos, Ross, for handling that stuff and making sure that you understand the importance of the game day atmosphere, because I know that was a major concern a year ago. Just little tweaks, changing the turf, installing. That's coming.
You and I were told that is going to happen.
So ribbon boards on the stadium, that kind of stuff, all that's coming. I still think they need the color changing, quick off LED lights in the stadium. I know that seems silly, and I was told it's like a $3 million expense to change the lighting. So what?
Oh, so you think they're going to play more night games?
I think that they're going to certainly try when you start realizing that they're playing night games on November 15th now against UCLA. I think that seems likely to happen. And all of that to say, I hope Ohio State fans are still grateful and glad for the gift of the Buckeyes culture. And I know that sounds incredibly cliche and probably a little scarlet, glasses and maybe a little homerish, whatever. When you consider the way things are nationally, when you look at the way things are unfolding in other athletic departments around the country.
Which one specifically?
I'm not here to name names, okay? But let's just say that there's another program that you are familiar with, that you regularly compete against in sports. And let's say their entire athletic department is an embarrassment.
What direction would I be looking?
I would say probably north.
Okay.
It's their entire culture is a festering boil.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look.
I think that's too high a praise for it.
I don't know. I've seen some pretty ugly boils. But then you look at what Ohio State's is, and you're like, man, it's pretty great here. And then you watch and you see John Cooper still roaming through the halls of the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. I know Buckeyes fans from my era were like, argh. But like John Cooper's important to Ryan Day. He has an office there and he still lives it. When you watch Urban Meyer walk up and down the sideline against Michigan in Michigan Stadium on November 29th as the Buckeyes put that game away, and he's giving Ryan Day hugs and high fives on the sideline and patting everyone on the butt and it is a special place that Ohio State has built for the last 125 years. And I really hope that fans can allow themselves, regardless of what happens next Wednesday night, regardless of what happened the last time they were on the field. Like, it is a really, really elite and special group of people and a program in general that we get to cover. And we are so, so grateful for it.
And with that said, on like a Fireside Friday on the beat presented by the Waterworks, that might be the last time we hear appreciative, optimistic Berm until Wednesday.
Yeah, game time's up. Now it's time for the game.
Now we're going to hit the road down to the Lone Star State for the Cotton Bowl, Ohio State and Miami on New Year's Eve. So here's what we're thinking, America. We are going to take a Monday mailbag.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to submit those questions, do so at theaustinandbermshow@gmail.com. theaustinandbermshow@gmail.com. We will record that when we get to Dallas on Sunday. That will be Monday's version of the beat.
Send in your questions only about the Cotton Bowl or Ohio State, Miami.
The Buckeyes arrive at the Hotel Anatole. Do you think we should pronounce it Anatole?
I'm going to pronounce it Anatole.
Anatole. Late on Sunday. We will knock out a quick, snappy J, confirming that the Buckeyes made it. The two players will talk as the Buckeyes arrive there at that team hotel, but that will be late. So it's
going to be like 10 p on Sunday Eastern time.
There might not be a long shelf life, but we want to make sure that we get you some of those snappy J's. Then, after that Monday version, we will be of the beat at AT&T Stadium for a full team media day. So some of these folks that we talked about, a Larry Johnson, a Brian Hartline, etc. We will aspire for a notebook as we did last year at the Rose Bowl. That was one of my favorites that we've done. Just floating around for 45 minutes of nonstop questions with the Buckeyes coaches, players, support staff, whoever's there. So that's the plan. There won't be anything, knock on the wall, on Saturday, but that will be the content plan as we get down there to Texas and roll along on the Austin and Berm Show. We are very much looking forward to it, and we appreciate everybody who's allowed us to do this job and everyone who has supported us along the way at 97.1 The Fan, 10 TV, 10 TV Plus, Apple, Spotify, Roku. If you listen audio only, we appreciate all of you. So Berm will be nervous by the next time that we talk to you, but the holiday vibes were strong and wanted to wish everyone these happy holidays and show our gratitude as well. Is that correct?
100%.
Okay.
We'll see you there. We'll see you in Dallas.
He's Berm. I'm Austin. Happy day after Christmas. We'll see you in Texas.